CEO said get lost, you useless nanny before his wedding speech, so I played his audio to all. Jessica Lane, 30, came from Pine Hollow, a quiet little town where everyone knows your name and no one forgets your past. With her warm smile, classic beauty, and heart full of purpose, she arrived in California to work as an emergency nanny for the son of Carter Rowe, a brilliant but cold-hearted CEO. For months, Jessica cared for little Henry while Carter prepared for the perfect wedding to a status-obsessed influencer. To everyone else, Jessica was invisible, just the nanny. Until Henry spoke his first words to her, threatened by their bond, Carter began to unravel. Behind closed doors, he belittled Jessica, mocked her work, and made sure she felt replaceable. On the day of his grand wedding, just seconds before stepping up for his big speech, he turned to her and spat, "Get lost, you useless nanny." But Jessica was already holding the remote in front of hundreds of guests, business elites, press, and family. She hit play. His voice, arrogant and venomous, filled the venue. Guests turned. The bride froze. And for the first time, the mask fell. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. Jessica didn't come to ruin his day, she came to reclaim her voice, because when a woman is treated like she's invisible for too long, she learns exactly where, when, and how to be seen. Follow the channel to witness every twist in Jessica's journey. Her revenge isn't over, it's only just begun. The next part of the story is coming soon. Chapter 1, The Invisible Woman. Jessica Lane's fingers tapped nervously against her thigh as the Uber wound its way through the exclusive Malibu hills. Palm trees swayed against the cloudless California sky, a stark contrast to the dense pine forests of Pine Hollow where she'd grown up. At 30, with her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and wearing a simple blouse and skirt that had seemed professional back home, she suddenly felt underdressed for what awaited her. The car pulled up to a gate where a security guard checked her ID before waving them through. Jessica's breath caught as the sprawling modernist mansion came into view, all glass, steel, and sharp angles perched on the cliffside overlooking the Pacific Ocean. "This is it, ma'am," the driver said, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Jessica nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you." The agency had called her yesterday, an emergency placement. The previous nanny had quit without notice, and the client needed someone immediately. The pay was extraordinary, enough to help her mother with the mounting medical bills. Back home, Jessica couldn't say no, even when they told her who her employer would be, Carter Rowe. Tech CEO. Fortune 500 darling. Worth billions after his AI security company went public last year. His face was plastered across business magazines with headlines like "The Future of American Innovation" and "Silicon Valley's Golden Boy." As Jessica approached the front entrance, the massive glass door swung open. A thin woman with a tablet stood there, her expression pinched. "You're the temporary nanny?" she asked, not bothering with a greeting. "Yes, I'm Jessica Lane." The woman, Vivian, as she introduced herself, was Carter's personal assistant. She spoke rapidly as she led Jessica through the cavernous home. "Mr. Rowe is extremely busy with his upcoming wedding to Ms. Sloan Winters. You'll be caring for Henry, who is 4. The child has developmental delays and doesn't speak. We've had 7 nannies in the past year." Jessica frowned. 7? Vivian's thin lips pressed together. "Mr. Rowe has high standards." They stopped at a door painted pale blue, the only hint of warmth in the sterile environment. Vivian knocked once before opening it. Inside was a beautiful nursery filled with toys that looked untouched. By the window sat a small boy with dark curls, staring out at the ocean. He didn't turn when they entered. "Henry," Vivian said sharply. "Your new nanny is here." The boy didn't respond. Jessica moved slowly into the room, kneeling a few feet from Henry. Hi there, she said softly. I'm Jessica. It's really nice to meet you. Henry continued staring out the window. I'll leave you to it, Vivian said. Dinner is at 6. Mr. Rowe occasionally joins when he's home, which is rare. Ms. Winters visits on weekends. Henry's schedule is on the tablet. Mr. Rowe monitors the security cameras, so please ensure all tasks are completed properly. After Vivian left, Jessica sat cross-legged on the floor near Henry, not crowding him. You have a beautiful view, she said conversationally. Back where I'm from in Pine Hollow, we have trees instead of ocean. Lots and lots of pine trees, hence the name. She smiled. But I bet you can see whales from here sometimes, can't you? For the briefest moment, Henry's eyes flickered toward her, then back to the window. Jessica counted it as a win. The first 3 days passed in a blur of routine. Henry was meticulous about certain things. His dinosaur toys had to be arranged by size, his apple slices cut into exactly 8 pieces. He didn't speak, but Jessica noticed he understood everything. His eyes, so like his father's in the few photos she'd seen around the house, were intelligent and observant. On the 4th day, Jessica was reading Henry a story about a lighthouse keeper when the nursery door swung open. Carter Rose stood in the doorway, his 6-foot frame imposing in a tailored charcoal suit. In person, he was even more striking than in photographs: sharp jawline, penetrating dark eyes, and an expression that suggested perpetual impatience. Mr. Rowe, Jessica said, standing quickly. We weren't expecting you. His eyes swept over her dismissively before focusing on his son. Henry. Come give Daddy a hug. Henry didn't move from his spot on the rug. A flash of annoyance crossed Carter's face. Henry. Now. Jessica felt her chest tighten as Henry's small shoulders tensed. She stepped forward. We were just finishing a story about, did I ask you? Carter cut her off coldly. When I want my son to do something, I expect it to happen. He's just engaged in his book, Jessica said, keeping her voice gentle despite the hammering in her chest. Children sometimes need transitions. What he needs, Carter interrupted, is discipline and structure, not coddling. That's the problem with you small-town types, all feelings, no backbone. He checked his Rolex. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. I expect progress reports on his speech development. The therapist says he's capable, he's just stubborn. As quickly as he'd arrived, Carter was gone, leaving a heavy silence behind. Jessica knelt beside Henry, whose little hands were clenched tight. It's okay, she whispered. Would you like to finish our story? Henry didn't respond, but when Jessica settled back with the book, he slowly leaned against her side, the first physical contact he'd initiated. Her heart swelled as she continued reading, her voice steady despite the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. That night in her small but luxurious guest suite, Jessica opened her journal and wrote, Day 4 with Henry. He's not stubborn, he's waiting for someone to actually see him. Outside her window, the California moon cast silver light across the endless Pacific. So different from Pine Hollow, yet the same moon hung over her mother's small house there. Jessica touched the glass, feeling caught between worlds, and wondering how long she could last in this one. If you're as invested in Jessica and Henry's journey as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Will Jessica be able to break through Carter's cold exterior? Will Henry finally speak? The story continues in Chapter 2. Chapter 2, The Voice Between Worlds. 3 weeks into her employment, Jessica established a rhythm with Henry. Mornings were for educational activities, puzzles, counting games, and picture books. Afternoons they spent outdoors in the mansion's manicured gardens or at the private beach below the property. While Henry remained silent, his communication grew in other ways: a tug on her hand when he wanted something, a small smile when she sang off-key during bath time. The wedding preparations intensified around them. Florists, caterers, and event planners streamed through the house daily. Sloan Winters, Instagram celebrity, beauty brand owner, and Carter's fiancé, arrived each weekend in a cloud of expensive perfume and entourage. Jessica first encountered her during a Saturday afternoon, when she was helping Henry build a sandcastle on the private beach below the house. "There you are," came a melodic voice from the stone staircase. Sloan descended toward them, impossibly elegant in white linen pants and a silk blouse, oversized sunglasses perched on her perfect nose. Two assistants trailed behind her, one holding a parasol over her head, the other filming with a professional camera. "Hello, Ms. Winters," Jessica said, standing and brushing sand from her shorts. Sloan's smile didn't reach her eyes as she approached Henry. "Hi, sweetie. Give Sloan a hug. We're going to be family soon." Henry scooted closer to Jessica's legs. Sloan's smile tightened. "Still not talking?" "Carter said the therapist thinks he's doing it on purpose." She turned to her camera assistant. "You can stop filming. This isn't going to work for content." The assistant lowered the camera. "We're working on communication through other means," Jessica explained. "Henry expresses himself in many ways, even without words." Sloan waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Carter needs his son to speak before the wedding. How does it look when America's most brilliant innovator has a child who won't talk? People will think there's something wrong." Jessica felt her cheeks flush with anger. "There's nothing wrong with Henry." "Of course not," Sloan said with manufactured sweetness. "But the Roe brand is about perfection. That's why Carter hired you, to fix this little issue." She checked her watch. "Anyway, I need Henry for a fitting. The wedding planner wants photos of him in his ring-bearer outfit for the press package." Jessica knelt beside Henry. "Would you like to go try on your special outfit for the wedding?" Henry's dark eyes met hers, anxious. "I'll come with you," Jessica promised. "That won't be necessary," Sloan said sharply. "I'm perfectly capable of handling my future stepson for an hour." "I understand, but transitions can be difficult, and, Jessica," Sloan cut in, her voice honeyed but firm, "you're the help. Know your place." The words stung like a slap. Jessica watched helplessly as Sloan's assistant took Henry's reluctant hand and led him up the stairs. Henry looked back once, his eyes wide with silent protest. That evening, Jessica found Henry sitting alone in the massive kitchen. The staff had prepared his dinner, but it sat untouched. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. "Not hungry?" Henry pushed his plate away. Jessica sat beside him. "I missed you this afternoon. Did the fitting go okay?" Henry stared at his lap. "You know what?" Jessica said, keeping her voice light. "When I was little and had a rough day, my mom would make me cinnamon toast. It's not fancy, but it always helped. Would you like to try some instead?" As she prepared the simple treat, Jessica talked about Pine Hollow, the town square with its ancient oak tree, the summer fair where she once won a pie-eating contest, the way snow fell so quietly you could hear your own heartbeat. "It's different from here," she said, placing the toast in front of Henry. "But different doesn't mean better or worse. Just different." Henry took a small bite, then another. "My mom always says that food tastes better when you share your thoughts," Jessica continued. "But I think sometimes thoughts are too big for words. And that's okay too." As she cleared his empty plate, she heard it, so soft she almost missed it. "Thank you." Jessica froze, her heart pounding. She turned slowly, afraid to scare off the moment Henry was looking directly at her, his eyes clear and focused. "You're welcome," she whispered, fighting back tears. "You're so welcome, Henry." The next morning, Jessica was helping Henry with a jigsaw puzzle when Carter strode into the nursery, followed by Vivian. "Is it true?" he demanded without preamble. Jessica blinked. "I'm sorry?" The kitchen staff reported that Henry spoke last. "Night. To you." Jessica glanced at Henry, who had gone still beside her. "Yes, he thanked me for making him cinnamon toast." Something flickered across Carter's face, surprise, relief, but also something darker. "Henry," he said, his voice suddenly gentle. "Can you say something for Daddy? Say hello or Daddy, anything." Henry pressed himself against Jessica's side, silent. Carter's expression hardened. "What did you do to make him talk?" "I didn't do anything special," Jessica said. "We were just having a quiet moment together." "There must have been a technique. A method." Carter paced the room. "I've hired the best therapists, specialists from across the country, Mr. Rowe," Jessica interrupted carefully. "Sometimes children just need to feel safe and heard before they're ready to speak." Carter stopped pacing. "Are you suggesting I don't make my son feel safe?" The dangerous edge in his voice made Jessica choose her next words carefully. "Not at all. I'm just saying that different environments can elicit different responses." "Vivian," Carter snapped, "schedule intensive sessions with Henry's speech therapist. Double the frequency. And set up cameras in the kitchen. I want to see exactly what happened last night." "Yes, Mr. Rowe," Vivian replied. After they left, Jessica felt Henry's small hand slip into hers. "It's okay," she told him, though she wasn't sure it was. "You talk when you want to talk. There's no rush." That night, Jessica found a note slipped under her door. "Miss Lane, your presence is requested at tomorrow's wedding planning luncheon. Mr. Rowe wishes to discuss Henry's progress with the broader family." Vivian. The next day, Jessica wore her nicest dress, a simple blue wrap that brought out her eyes. She felt painfully out of place among the designer outfits around the expansive patio table. Carter sat at the head, with Sloane to his right. Jessica was placed at the far end, beside Henry. Carter's parents, a distinguished older couple with the same sharp features as their son, sat stiffly across from Sloane's mother, a former model who had clearly passed her beauty to her daughter. "As you know," Carter addressed the table after the first course was served, "Henry has been working with specialists on his speech development. I'm pleased to announce we've had a breakthrough." All eyes turned to Henry, who stared intently at his plate. "Thanks to Miss Lane's unconventional approach," Carter continued, his tone suggesting the words tasted sour, "Henry spoke his first words this week." Sloane clapped her hands. "That's wonderful. Just in time for the wedding." "Indeed." Carter agreed. "Mississippi Lane, perhaps you can share your technique with the table?" Jessica felt trapped. "There's no special technique, Mr. Rowe. Children speak when they're ready." "Nonsense," Carter's father interjected. "The boy is nearly 5. This delay is abnormal. Rowe men are articulate leaders, not silent followers." Jessica felt Henry tense beside her. "With all due respect," she said carefully, "communication takes many forms. Henry understands everything. He's incredibly bright and observant." "Observant doesn't build empires," Carter's father retorted. "Perhaps," Jessica responded, finding her courage, "but empathy might build better ones." A tense silence fell over the table. Carter's jaw tightened. Mississippi Lane is from a small town in Maine. Her perspectives are limited. Pine Hollow is in Vermont, actually, Jessica corrected quietly. Carter's eyes flashed. The point is, Henry needs to start speaking consistently. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I won't have my son embarrassing me in front of the board members and investors who will be attending. He's not a performance, Jessica said before she could stop herself. Every head turned toward her. Excuse me? Carter's voice was dangerously low. Jessica knew she should apologize, back down. Her job, her mother's medical bills, hung in the balance. But she looked at Henry's downcast eyes and found her voice. Henry isn't a corporate asset to be optimized, she said steadily. He's a child with his own timeline and needs. Carter's smile was cold. Mississippi Lane, you're here to implement solutions, not offer philosophical commentary on parenting. Perhaps we should discuss your continued employment in private. I think that would be best, Jessica agreed, her heart hammering. As the uncomfortable luncheon continued, Jessica felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. A text from her mother, hospital called. New treatment option available. $60,000 not covered by insurance. Don't know what to do, Jessica closed her eyes briefly. The sum represented nearly a year of her salary here. She couldn't afford to lose this job. When she opened her eyes, she found Henry watching her intently. Somehow, his gaze steadied her. After lunch, Carter summoned Jessica to his home office, a minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Your performance today was disappointing, he said without preamble, leaning against his desk. I apologize if I overstepped, Jessica replied, though she wasn't sorry for defending Henry. Carter studied her. You care about my son. Of course. I do. That's your problem. You're the help, Mississippi Lane, not family. Henry needs structure and discipline, not whatever small-town nurturing you're offering. Jessica forced herself to remain calm. Children need both structure and nurturing to thrive. Carter laughed humorlessly. I was raised with strict discipline, and I built a multi-billion-dollar company before 40. I didn't need coddling to succeed. And are you happy, Mr. Rowe? The question clearly startled him. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face before the mask returned. Happiness is irrelevant. Success is what matters. He straightened. You may keep your position for now, since Henry has responded to you. But understand this, I'm watching you. One more public disagreement, and you're gone. That night, as Jessica tucked Henry into bed, he looked up at her with solemn eyes. Story? He asked, his voice small but clear. Jessica's heart soared at hearing him speak again, but she kept her reaction measured, not wanting to overwhelm him. Of course, she said, reaching for his favorite book. Henry shook his head. Your story. Pine Hollow. Jessica smiled, settling beside him on the bed. Pine Hollow is a special place. It's where everyone knows your name, but they also know when to give you space. The air smells like pine needles and wood smoke, and in autumn, the mountains look like they're on fire with red and gold leaves. As Henry drifted to sleep, Jessica realized something important was happening, not just Henry finding his voice, but Jessica rediscovering hers. Chapter 3, The Wedding Day Reckoning. The morning of Carter and Sloane's wedding dawned picture perfect, clear. Blue skies, gentle ocean breeze, and the scent of thousands of white roses wafting through the property. The ceremony would take place at sunset on the mansion's cliffside lawn, with 300 elite guests in attendance. Jessica helped Henry into his custom-tailored suit, marveling at how grown-up he looked. You're very handsome, she told him, adjusting his little bow tie. Henry beamed at her. Over the past 2 weeks, his words had come more frequently, though still only with Jessica and only when they were alone. Carter had grown increasingly frustrated by his son's selective speech, interpreting it as defiance rather than trust. "Will you stay?" Henry asked, his dark eyes serious. Jessica's heart clenched. Her contract officially ended after the wedding. Carter had made no mention of extending it. "I'll be right there during the ceremony," she assured him, avoiding the larger question. A knock at the door interrupted them. Vivian entered, tablet in hand as always. "The photographer wants pre-ceremony shots of Henry in 10 minutes, she announced. "And Mississippi Lane, Mr. Rowe requests your presence in his study immediately." Jessica's stomach tightened. "Now? I need to get Henry to the photographer." "I'll take him," Vivian said. Mr. Rowe was quite insistent. With a reassuring smile to Henry, Jessica made her way to Carter's study. The house was chaos, florists making last-minute adjustments, caterers setting up stations, security personnel checking credentials. She knocked on the study door. "Enter," came Carter's voice. He stood by the window in his wedding tuxedo, looking impossibly handsome and utterly cold. A tumbler of amber liquid sat on his desk despite the early hour. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Rowe?" Carter turned, his expression unreadable. "Yes. I wanted to inform you personally that today will be your last day. I've arranged for a new nanny to start tomorrow, someone with proper credentials in developmental psychology." Though Jessica had suspected this was coming, the finality hit her hard. "I see. May I ask why?" Henry's speech development remains inconsistent. "He refuses to speak in front of me or Sloane, only you. This attachment is unhealthy and counterproductive. Children often open up first to people they feel safe with," Jessica said carefully. "It's a normal developmental progression." Carter's jaw tightened. "There you go again with your small-town wisdom. Tell me, Mississippi Lane, what qualifies you to know better than experts with advanced degrees?" "I don't claim to know better," Jessica replied. "I just know Henry." "You've been here 6 weeks, Carter scoffed. "I'm his father." "Yes, you are," Jessica agreed. "Which is why it breaks my heart that you see him as a project to be fixed rather than a child to be loved." Carter slammed his glass down. "You're dismissed. Collect your final paycheck from accounting after the ceremony. I want you gone by morning." Jessica stood her ground. "What about Henry? He deserves a proper goodbye." "I'll handle my son," Carter snapped. "Like you've handled him so far?" The words escaped before Jessica could stop them. Carter moved closer, his voice dangerously quiet. "You are replaceable, Mississippi Lane. Just a temporary nanny from nowhere. Do you understand? Get lost, you useless nanny." Jessica felt something snap inside her, not in defeat, but in clarity. Without breaking eye contact, she reached into her pocket and stopped the recording app on her phone. Carter's eyes widened as he realized what she'd done. "Give me that phone." "No." Jessica stepped back. "This isn't the first time you've spoken to me this way, Mr. Rowe. The difference is, now I have proof." Carter's face darkened. "You recorded me without consent? That's illegal." "California is a two-party consent state," Jessica agreed calmly. "But your security policy, the one I signed when I started, explicitly states that all interactions on the property may be recorded for security purposes. You've been recording me for weeks." "I simply returned the favor." Fury flashed across Carter's face. "What do you want?" Money? Is this blackmail? Jessica shook her head. I want to say goodbye to Henry properly. And I want you to see him, really see him, for the wonderful child he is, not the corporate heir you're trying to mold. Get out, Carter snarled. Security. We'll escort you off the property immediately. Mr. Rowe, Jessica said quietly, consider what's at stake. Your wedding. Your reputation. Is your pride worth all that? For a moment, uncertainty flickered in Carter's eyes. Jessica softened her tone. Let me stay through the ceremony. Let me say goodbye to Henry. Then I'll leave quietly with my recording deleted. Carter studied her, calculating his options. Finally, he nodded curtly. Fine. But if you interfere with this wedding in any way, I'll make sure you never work again, not in California, not in your precious Pine Hollow, not anywhere. Jessica left the study with her heart pounding. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Her phone vibrated with a text from her mother. Doctor says new treatment showing promising results for patients like me. Keeping the faith, tears pricked Jessica's eyes. The job had been her lifeline, a way to help her mother fight the cancer that had returned more aggressively than before. Now she would return to Pine Hollow with nothing but memories of a little boy who had touched her heart, unless an idea formed in Jessica's mind, risky, potentially catastrophic, but fueled by weeks of watching injustice disguised as privilege. She found Henry with the wedding party, looking uncomfortable as Sloane's bridesmaids cooed over him. When he saw Jessica, his eyes lit up. May I borrow the ring bearer for a final etiquette check? She asked with a professional smile. Once they were alone in a quiet corner of the garden, Jessica knelt to Henry's level. Henry, I need to tell you something important, she said gently. After today, I have to go back to my home in Pine Hollow. Henry's lower lip trembled. No. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Sometimes adults make decisions that aren't fair. She took his small hands in hers. But I want you to remember something, your voice matters. Your feelings matter. You matter. Henry threw his arms around her neck. Take me with you, he whispered. Jessica hugged him tightly, fighting back tears. I can't do that. But I promise you'll be okay. And maybe someday, when you're older, you can visit Pine Hollow. As the ceremony time approached, Jessica helped Henry rehearse his ring-bearer duties one last time. She then took her assigned place at the back of the seating area, positioned to help whisk Henry away after his part was complete. The ceremony was spectacular, hundreds of guests seated on white chairs beneath a canopy of flowers, the Pacific Ocean providing a breathtaking backdrop. A string quartet played as the wedding party processed. Henry walked solemnly down the aisle, the ring secured on a small pillow, his eyes finding Jessica's for reassurance, when Carter took his place. At the altar, a collective murmur of appreciation swept through the crowd. Powerful, handsome, successful, the embodiment of the American dream. No one saw what Jessica saw, a man who measured human worth in productivity and performance. Sloane appeared at the back of the aisle, radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than Jessica's mother's medical bills. The guests rose, cameras flashed, and the perfect social media wedding moment unfolded. Jessica clutched her phone in her pocket, her heart racing. The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. This wasn't about revenge or money. It was about truth, and maybe, just maybe, creating a chance for real change. As the minister welcomed everyone and began to speak about love and commitment, Jessica slipped away from her seat. She moved quickly through the house to the sound booth where technicians controlled the microphones and music for the ceremony. Excuse me, she said to the young technician. Mr. Rowe asked me to check something with the audio system. The technician looked confused. Everything's running perfectly. Jessica smiled apologetically. He's very particular. It will just take a second. While the technician turned to check his equipment, Jessica connected her phone to the auxiliary input, a connection intended for backup music if the primary system failed. "Sorry for the interruption," she said, stepping back. "You're right. Everything looks perfect." She returned to the ceremony just as the minister was inviting Carter to share his vows. Carter stepped forward, the microphone capturing his confident voice as he began to speak about his journey with Sloane. Jessica took a deep breath and pressed play on her phone. Carter's voice, his real voice, suddenly echoed through the speakers. "Cutting off his romantic vows, you are replaceable, Mississippi Lane. Just a temporary nanny from nowhere. Do you understand? Get lost, you useless nanny." A collective gasp rose from the guests. Carter froze at the altar, his face draining of color as he searched the crowd until his eyes locked on Jessica's. The recording continued, playing snippets Jessica had collected over weeks. "He's defective. 4 years old and can't string together a sentence. How am I supposed to present that to my board? Sloane's right, we should have hired a surrogate with a higher IQ. Emotional intelligence is a concept invented by people too weak to succeed in the real world." Chaos erupted. Sloane stood shocked at the altar. Guests whispered furiously. Security personnel scrambled to locate the source of the audio. Jessica remained still, her eyes on Henry, who sat with Carter's mother in the front row. The little boy's expression was solemn but unafraid, as if hearing spoken aloud what he had always known. The audio cut off as technicians regained control of the sound system. In the sudden silence, Carter's voice rang out, strained with fury, "Remove her. Now." Security guards moved toward Jessica, but something unexpected happened. Henry slipped from his grandmother's grasp and ran to Jessica, wrapping his arms around her legs. Then, in a clear voice that carried across the stunned gathering, he spoke, "She stays." The crowd fell silent. Carter stood frozen at the altar, staring at his son, speaking clearly, publicly, defiantly. Jessica knelt beside Henry, shielding him from the chaos. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to do this." Henry looked at her with eyes far wiser than his years. "You said my voice matters." Sloane stepped forward from the altar, her expression unreadable as she approached them. Jessica braced herself, but instead of anger, she saw something else in the bride's eyes, recognition. "Those recordings," Sloane said quietly. "Has he always spoken to you that way?" Jessica met her gaze honestly. "Yes. And about Henry, too." Sloane glanced back at Carter, who stood rigidly at the altar, his perfect facade crumbling as whispers spread through the crowd of elite guests, many already on their phones. "I knew," Sloane admitted, her voice barely audible. "I think I always knew, but the raw name, the lifestyle." She looked down at Henry, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. "I'm sorry." Security guards surrounded them, awaiting instructions. "Mr. Rowe wants her removed from the property immediately," one of them said. Sloane straightened, something shifting in her expression. "No. The ceremony is postponed. Please ask the guests to give us privacy." An hour later, Jessica sat in the kitchen with Henry, sharing one last plate of cinnamon toast. The house was eerily quiet, the wedding guests long gone, staff whispering in corners about the scandal that would undoubtedly make headlines by morning. Carter appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his perfect appearance finally disheveled. Sloane stood beside him, her wedding dress exchanged for casual clothes, her expression determined. "You've destroyed everything," Carter said flatly to Jessica. "No," Sloane corrected him. "You did that yourself." "I've called off the wedding." Carter's jaw tightened. "This is temporary. My PR team will handle. Stop, Sloane interrupted. For once, just stop. This isn't about your image or your company. This is about Henry. She turned to Jessica. Thank you for having the courage I didn't. Jessica nodded, words failing her. Carter looked between them, his control slipping. What do you want? Money? A settlement? Name your price to keep the rest of those recordings private. Jessica stood, placing a protective hand on Henry's shoulder. I don't want your money, Mr. Rowe. I want you to get help, for Henry's sake, and your own. Therapy, Sloane added firmly. Real therapy, not just for appearances. And a parenting coach. And time, actual time, with your son. Carter laughed bitterly. Or what? Or I'll petition for full custody, Sloane said, surprising everyone. I may not be his biological mother, but I've been in his life for 2 years. And I have excellent lawyers. You wouldn't dare. Try me, Sloane replied. The recordings would be compelling evidence of emotional abuse. Carter's face contorted with a mix of rage and, beneath it, fear. For a moment, Jessica glimpsed the wounded man behind the powerful facade. Henry, Carter said, his voice strained. As he addressed his son directly. Come here. Henry remained beside Jessica, unmoving. Please, Carter added, the word clearly unfamiliar on his lips. Henry looked up at Jessica, who nodded encouragingly. Slowly, he approached his father. Carter knelt, awkwardly bringing himself to his son's level perhaps for the first time. Have I scared you? Henry nodded solemnly. Something broke in Carter's expression, a crack in the perfect armor he'd built around himself. He reached out tentatively, and when Henry didn't pull away, he drew his son into an embrace. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words barely audible. Jessica gathered her few belongings while Sloane arranged for a car to take her to the airport. As she prepared to leave, Henry ran to her one last time. Will you come back? He asked, his voice clear and strong. Jessica knelt to hug him. I don't know, sweetheart. But I'll never forget you. Pine Hollow, Henry said. Trees instead of ocean. Jessica smiled through her tears. That's right. And maybe someday you'll see it. As the car pulled away from the mansion, Jessica watched the California coastline fade into the distance. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a wire transfer from Sloane Winters for exactly $60,000, with a simple note, for your mother's treatment. Some bridges are worth burning. Jessica leaned back against the seat, exhausted but somehow lighter. The recording that had played at the wedding was now deleted from her phone, but its echo would remain, not as a weapon, but as a moment of truth that might, just might, change lives. 6 months later, Jessica sat on the porch of her mother's house in Pine Hollow, watching autumn leaves drift from the trees. Her mother, responding well to the new treatment, rocked gently beside her. Package for you, her mother said, pointing to a delivery truck pulling up. The courier handed Jessica a sleek white envelope and a small package wrapped in blue paper. She opened the envelope first, finding a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Dear Miss Lane, they say the truth sets you free. I didn't believe that until the day you played those recordings. It's taken 6 months of intensive therapy and parenting classes, but I'm learning to see myself and Henry more clearly. Sloane and I didn't reconcile, but we've established a healthier relationship for Henry's sake. She visits weekly and has become the supportive presence he deserves, most importantly, Henry hasn't stopped talking since that day. His therapist says he's advancing rapidly, making up for lost time. He speaks about Pine Hollow often, about trees instead of ocean. I won't ask for forgiveness. What I will ask is enclosed in the package. Regards, Carter Rowe with trembling fingers. Jessica unwrapped the small blue package. Inside was a key and a photograph, Henry standing proudly in front of a small cabin surrounded by pine trees, holding a sign that read "Welcome home, Jessica." "What is it?" her mother asked. "A job offer," Jessica whispered, showing her the enclosed contract, a position as Henry's permanent caregiver with a salary that would secure her mother's ongoing treatment, and housing provided in a cabin on the edge of the row property. Carter had purchased land in Vermont, just outside Pine Hollow. "He's building a weekend home here," Jessica explained, reading further. "He wants Henry to experience small-town life. And he wants me to help." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Will you take it?" Jessica looked out at the familiar landscape of her hometown, the mountains blazing with autumn colors, the town square visible in the distance. She thought of Henry's solemn eyes, his hard-won voice, and the courage it had taken to speak truth. To power. "Yes," she said. "Some stories aren't finished yet." If this journey of courage, redemption, and finding your voice resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button now. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like Jessica's to light. Remember, sometimes the quietest voices make the loudest impact when they finally speak their truth. Coming next week, the reunion between Jessica and Henry, and how one brave nanny from a small town changed not just a little boy's life, but transformed a billion-dollar empire's values from the inside out. The end.